Folks, welcome to the Mind Your Miles pod. This is episode 5, I think. This is Nick Hilton here. I'm here with my fellas Will Baldwin and Dylan Bellis. Fellas, how are we doing today?
Doing well?
No
Yeah.
thumbs up don't count because this is an audio medium, Will, so I'm going to need a verbal confirmation here.
We're doing great.
Yeah, doing great. I just now settling into my new house. So just got here a couple days ago. So just trying to get back into a routine and just started running again.
Dylan, back in the great Midwest, moving away from Flagstaff, losing that altitude advantage. We hate to see it.
There's no advantage.
All right. Well, today we don't have a topic in mind. We're going to go for a little more of a wide-ranging conversation here, and I'm going to kick it off because I've made some changes to my running routine, and I want to kind of run this by you guys and hear your thoughts. Something we've talked about a little bit in the past. So I have ditched my GPS for all my easy runs, and I'm only using my GPS on workouts and long runs. I am going off of an old school Timex Ironman that I bought from Run Flagstaff back in like 2015, 2014. And I'll tell you what, guys, it is freeing. I'm loving it. So I know we've talked about this before. I want to kind of hear your thoughts on this and what you think about it.
Hate it.
Really? Why?
For many reasons. First of all, I think that's the right mindset, and that's how my watch looks. Like when I start a run, you can see one thing, and it is the time, total time of running. How many minutes and seconds I've been running. There's no other metrics on there whatsoever. No heart rate, no pace. And so I do the same thing, but then either for myself or for my coach, it's nice to be able to go back and look. It's cool to see progress over years. There might be periods like now where you don't need it at all, but it's cool to have that option. It's like when people are cleaning out their house and they start like throwing out old photo albums. It's like you can't ever get that back. Like we will never know if Nick broke 8-minute pace on this run, and that's devastating to not. I'm a big believer in what gets measured gets managed, and so like if one of my athletes told me that, I'd be like, you're probably trying to do some tomfoolery out there. You're probably trying to maybe race those easy runs. So I feel like I have the exact same setup, but I just want that option to be able to look, or if I'm coaching someone, and probably Nick's situation, I'm not worried about him. He's very mature, and I know he's not going to be racing those easy days, but I like it. And it kind of goes into like I have this whole ethos of like technology and phones and social media. Like there's like people do that all, like they delete all the apps off their phone. I hate it. Like we live in 2024. You can FaceTime someone in Antarctica. We have these incredible tools. Satellites from space are pinging you to know how fast Nick Hilton is running on a canal. And he said, nah, I'm going to use this watch from the 1900s. It's just like,
Okay.
So
I just tell people all the time, you think like the Oregon Trail, like you're like in the Northeast and you head off. And like when you leave back then, it's like, well, I'll never see my family again. It's like, we never have to do that. We can go across the world and still see our family and FaceTime and Snapchat. And people are like, no, I'm too cool for Instagram. I'm too cool for Snapchat. Let us be a part of your life. And I wanna see Nick's runs on Strava. I wanna like them.
Yeah. Are you still uploading it to Strava? Are you still doing like a
Can
60
you a
minute?
manual?
Are you manually adding it?
no, I'm not.
No local legends.
I'm just uploading workouts and long runs. So anything that I record with the GPS gets uploaded. Everything else I'm just have a spreadsheet log that I'm recording things on.
So I've got something here. I'm pretty partial when it comes. I don't really care either way. But
Impartial.
so like impartial.
Right? Is that
I'm from
right?
North Carolina,
No.
man. I'm from rural North Carolina.
Impartial would be the correct way. Yeah, if you're partial
Okay.
to something, that means you're on that side. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'm impartial. So I'm curious because we know a lot about how we feel, the effort wise, and kind of got a good sense of that. And I feel as though some of that comes back to when like we had a period where we didn't run with GPS watches. So like you kind of had to force your way to kind of learn. We had like mile markers, of course, like out one place where we run or on trails and whatnot, and you could use things like Map My Run to kind of get an idea of how fast you were running. And I use that stuff all the time. But like I feel like having that experience, even if it was only a handful of years of just running without the technology, actually informed a lot for my own running now. And it's easy for me to say, hey, I'm going to go by feel when I've done that before, versus someone who has only had technology, has only run with GPS watches, can sometimes find themselves in a place to where they don't know how things feel. They just know what their watch says, and then they relate that to how they feel.
100% agree.
Which is one of the things I hate about GPS watches. And I think probably the runners that we talk to are all kind of more fall into that category of runners who have maybe never used anything but a GPS watch. And whenever I talk to them about running by feel, it's kind of like speaking a foreign language. And I always related to like, you're never going to run, you're never going to have, or it's less likely you're going to have that huge breakout day if you're so tied to the data. Because you could be feeling amazing, but you're going to be looking at your watch. And if you're 15 seconds faster per mile than what you normally ran, even if you feel incredible, like I feel like you can be less likely to take that leap and really hammer it. Whereas if you know your body and you know how you feel and you're running fast and you're feeling really good, it's just going to increase the likelihood, or you're going to be more willing to take that chance to go for that, to go for that big PR. So I think learning to run by feel is important. I mean, I didn't run with a GPS, and I'm the oldest of the three here. I didn't run with a GPS until I was 23 years old. So I spent like the first 10 years of competitive running, either not wearing a watch at all until college. I raw dogged it. We just ran loops that the people before us ran. And we assumed they were a certain distance. And then in college, just wearing a Timex and making fun of the one kid who did wear a GPS watch and never waiting for his satellites to link up and just taking off without him. So for me, it's a little bit more recent. And one of the reasons I made the switch, there's a couple. One is I'm just a head case, and it's just nice to divorce myself from the data a little bit. So now I don't have to constantly compare myself to Nick from 8 years ago. So when I'm looking at my data now, whether it's like my weekly stats, which I'm compiling in minutes versus miles, it's almost like I have a bit of a fresh slate, which for me is refreshing because I'm just thinking about what my fitness is right now. So how did the workouts go this week? Not like, well, I only ran 50 miles this week. I used to run 100 miles, like, and having that in my head. Like I said, because I am a head case, it's kind of nice to have that fresh slate. It's also nice, like, it's helped me reframe days where I'm super busy, and maybe I can only sneak out for 30 minutes or a 4-mile run instead of, or maybe my only chance to run that day is, at a shakeout run or a group run at an event I'm working. So it's slow. It's not necessarily higher quality stuff, but seeing that it's just like a 45-minute or 30-minute easy run versus like 4 miles at 8:30 pace helps me reframe it more as a win. So at least I'm getting 5 or 6 days in, even if some of those days are lower quality, just helps me feel a little bit better about where my running's at. Again, this is all prefaced with the fact that I am a bit of a head case. So
Dylan, you kind of look like Brad Pitt right now.
Brad Pitt?
A little bit. Yeah. A little bit of that young kind of Fight Club-ish, Brad Pitt.
Nick, actually, that's a really good point because I still feel like I kind of disagree, but I think that's a good point that I am not that way. Like I ran 9:50 pace today because I'm, again, just starting up from a broken bone. And I like you said, I have so many athletes that are that way. Like if we're starting up, they're like, this is awful. Or they're trying to, like you said, compare. And they're like, I used to run 8-minute pace. So they're trying to force that where I don't have that. Like I know it'll happen. And like, that's kind of how I gauge my fitness. I always run at the same level. And then eventually in a few months, I'll go for an easy run and it'll be like 6:50 pace, 3 minutes per mile faster. And I won't have tried any harder. And I'll go, oh, wow, things are coming around. And so, but that's not normal. And I have so many athletes who maybe they would benefit from that. And they are head cases about it. They'll see a split and freak out. And it's like, you gotta let things go and go by feel. But yeah, that is, I feel like so much of coaching, that's just like that never ending battle of trying to instill the whole learn your feels and what to or learning your feels and then also not learning your feels because sometimes you feel certain things and they're not really important guidelines, and then I don't know, it's just such a hard thing to
When it comes
translate to people.
to racing, let's just say anything under like a half marathon, I've always found it. I mean, I always use a GPS watch. It's a habitual thing. But like when I'm racing, let's say a 5K or a 10K or maybe even something a little bit longer, 10 miles, I don't do as much checking of my watch and try to just or relay my own like feel of things because it's just like wasted time, right? Like for 5K, I mean, you guys know like you're essentially just running at like your best effort for 15 minutes or whatever it is. But I found this is really hard to relay to athletes, and just trying to get them to. There was like, hey, what pace? How should I
Bro, I've
how should
had
I race a
so many
5K?
athletes ask me to like write the race as a workout.
Yeah,
Like, can you like put it 1 mile at this? And I'm like, I certainly can. I don't want to. So like it's like
yeah.
it just it it's not it's can we explain why that's such a bad idea?
Yeah, I mean, like, I think and I think what Nick was saying, it's like it's a limitation, right? So if you look at your watch and you see that you're running too fast or too slow, then you kind of like you have a response, a mental response of like, and that affects you physically. So like you see the watch says, hey, too fast, you're gonna slow down. Like, did you need to slow down? Maybe not. It also prevents you, again, what Nick was saying, it prevents you from having those days where maybe over exceed your own expectations, which those are the days that we live on. I mean, like those are the days that are really awesome that you cross the finish line. You're like, holy shit, I just did that. Um, but if you're just looking at the watch and you're letting the watch guide you the whole time, it can be a huge limitation to the outcome of the performance.
And like if you have some target that's very, very a small window,
Yeah.
the likelihood that you miss that is insanely high. Like if I was trying to guess anyone's first mile of a 5K, maybe I can get close, but probably I won't hit it. So then what? We missed it. We failed. We get through mile 1, we failed. And so it's like it's just I don't think it's the best way to like set up that race, or like and like you said, even if we have that, it may not line up to our feeling. Like we might go out too fast and we feel in control. So then what? Like that might mean we need to tighten the screws and keep going. Or we might go out 10 seconds slower and it still feels overwhelming. Does that mean we need to put a surge in? It's like if we
Yeah.
don't have those feelings, we're just doing the incorrect thing in the moment because we're not listening to our body and we're just like having the watch tell us that we missed it. And they're not super accurate in race settings.
Well, especially big
Yep.
races, like a race like Chicago. I've heard tons of horror stories of just like I had no good GPS reading for the first like 3 miles.
Yeah.
I
Or
think
like,
that's
No.
every
Yeah.
marathon that's over like 5,000 people.
well,
They just
especially if you're in
can't.
a big city too with all the buildings and stuff, like
Yeah.
you're just not going to get accurate readings. And those
But
races, like the mile markers are accurate. Like you can
yeah.
you can go off the mile markers. Yeah.
Oh
With
gosh,
that
that
many
kills me.
watches, it's hard to they just can't get accurate signals to that many people at the same time. So you got a manual split.
I feel like, I mean, yeah, Chicago's a big one. I mean, the big races. I mean, if we're going up to marathon, that's a problem that I've run into a lot of people. It's like go off the mile markers. Like always trust the mile markers. Doesn't matter what race it is. Like you got to trust the mile markers and go by the mile markers, even if they're a place like Chicago. They're not wrong, but several of the kind of the smaller races, you're gonna have some variability in distances between mile markers.
You might have a long mile, but you just know that after that long mile, you're going to get a good split the next one around.
Right. Right.
So
Yeah,
it
it'll
evens
eventually
out.
work itself out. But even when I ran my PR at CIM, I thought I was a minute faster the whole time because I didn't use the mile markers as a very rookie mistake.
Mhm.
But CIM is 10,000 people. It's a 20% of some of the majors, and it's still I didn't get accurate GPS.
When I'm gonna kind of go back to like race planning for like a 5K, almost or 5K or 10K, even a mile. I I always hesitate to give a structured plan. Like almost like the shorter the distance of a race, the less of an actual action plan I like to give, because the marathon is different. A lot of it's pacing, right?
Yeah.
It's a different race, right? Like you're not actively racing for the entire 26.2 miles. I mean, you're just going out there trying to hit a specific pace, and you generally know what that is prior to going into
Or like
it.
we have a plan, but maybe there's like a time where we might like, oh, if we were gonna push it, this is maybe where we would do it. But for the
Yeah.
most part, it's like we can structure that pretty well.
So like for the shorter distances, like what do you guys tell your athletes like in terms of how to approach those races? Obviously, we have a general idea of like where that roughly would be, but I'm always really hesitant because it's like I don't know sometimes. Sometimes it's like, we haven't done anything like that. So it's like you have a general idea, but it could go 10 or 20 seconds in either direction given the day.
All I usually have is like a speed limit on the first mile that I beg for. Like, please, please do not go sprint the first mile.
Yeah, I mean, I coach pretty consistently, like, hey, let's try to negative split almost everything. And the first mile, especially in a 5K, is like, let's not go mile pace for the first mile. Let's make sure we're a little in control for that because that can go south. You could, if they say they're going to run 7-minute pace and they run that first one at like 6:35, like that last one could be 8 minutes. You don't you don't know. Like, give yourself a chance over the second half of the race, especially for athletes who just maybe aren't as experienced, because you have runners who have maybe run 10 marathons and like 3 5Ks. So you have some runners who maybe aren't as experienced in the shorter stuff. So try to keep the reins on. And then once you get through the mile, like just see what you open up and see what you have.
I can feel the insane levels of disappointment every time I like don't give an athlete a super detailed mile by mile plan. Like I can tell how bad they want it. And I've done it before for people, and it's like it feels fairly pointless because it never goes to plan because that's not what racing is.
No.
And then it's like,
And they're
well,
not on
why
the
did I?
track. Like it's like a not controlled environment where they can like go out and run a split right away. It's like you're not going to know what you're running to the first mile, and you're surrounded by jazzed up people all around you. Like it's just not as controlled as we would normally have.
Yeah, and it like I think it's just the hard thing of running in general. Like so many people, I don't know if it's like a type A thing or what, but they want everything in that window. Like they want, okay, if I'm gonna run this
Predictability.
race and I need to hit these splits, and that means that I'm ready. And it's just like that's not what it is. It's not, and it doesn't work like that. You can hit all those splits, and it doesn't guarantee you'll do it, and vice versa. You can never hit splits, and people show up. And I have a lot of gamers who like work out not great, and they show up and crush stuff, and vice versa. And so it's like that's just not. Yeah, there's no. I hate like even on like the more elite scene, people always say like, "Oh man, he should have been able to do this." It's like that's just not what rate. There's no should haves. There's no like gimmies. Like you don't just get to do stuff. Like it's racing. It's even if you have an insane resume, it's really really hard.
Yeah, there's it's real life racing is what it is. It sounds nice in your head to be able to create this elaborate plan and to know exactly what you're going to be at through each of those markers. But the reality is, and like especially at the highest levels of things, it's just simply not things that most athletes are thinking about. It's like most people generally have an idea of where they should be, but they're not breaking down the race so specifically that it controls everything. Like it's just not a reality. I mean, like look at the Olympic marathon trials just happened. Like, do you think that the guys and girls who finished 1, 2, 3, do you think that they actually were like, hey, I got to hit this exact number? Like, no, like they kind of have an idea. They kind of manage themselves within the field, within the people around them, and they let the race unfold as it should unfold. But that's a really hard thing to teach people.
It's incredibly hard.
Well, and most of the people we work with didn't come up racing for 10 years in high school and college. So there's, excuse me, maybe a little bit of they just don't have those instincts that we would have once you get out there and try to teach them. I think it's fun to set people up to race. Like, hey, just get out there and compete and have fun with it. But that's kind of a foreign concept when, hey, we're running for PRs. We need to run splits. Well, no, just put yourself in a position to eat up all the people who are going to die that last mile because they went out too hard. And that's the fun stuff. And that's how you run fast when you let go of the idea of splits and you just kind of focus on competing a little bit. That opens up another opportunity to run fast.
I like the idea of, with a lot of our athletes who run the longer distances, and you all spoke on it before, of encouraging your athletes to do shorter distances, miles, 5Ks, 10Ks. And recently I've been trying to do that more and more with my athletes too, because this is a very low time of year where there's not a lot of races going on. And I think it's a good thing to do, especially in some of the more harsher climate places. If they can get out for a 5K, that's great. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of value in just putting yourself on the line. I tell my athletes, just like, let's just go make it hurt. Like go take a risk. Like if it blows up on you, so what? Like it's a 5K. Like you're gonna be fine. But I feel like, because we are in the position of coaches who coach athletes who are in the pacing, the pacing game, we're training people so that they can hit a specific pace for a half marathon or a marathon. You kind of lose touch with, being able to actually get them deep into their out of their comfort zones, and to really push themselves in a way that like they've never experienced before. And I feel like a mile, 5K, 10K, those races hurt a very different way than a marathon hurts. And it's really easy for a marathoner to be like, I don't want to hurt like that. But there's a lot of value when it comes into like getting people to actually, see God on their workouts or
Bro,
races.
because I broke my foot or my leg in November. I was biking a lot, and that was one fun thing of biking, because like I did a couple threshold tests, and it was like, got to that point where like I could not move, couldn't breathe, like just collapsed on the bike. And like it's like, man, that's cool. Like it's hard to do that in running. It's hard to do it in biking too. You have to, like, it takes a little while, but like get to feel that, like, oh wow, I completely topped out and failed, like that high end effort level.
Mhm.
Like I think you get some of that same stuff at like a 5K, like you're at 2.5 miles and you just physically like can't move anymore. Like you lose the oxygen, and it's like, it's cool to get to experience that limit.
You
It's like my
gotta shock
favorite
the
part of like, oh, go
you gotta
ahead.
shock the system every once in a while, you know? It's like us lining up for like a 1500 that we absolutely should not be in. Sometimes you just gotta go out there and see what the heck happens,
Yeah.
and feel what it's like to booty lock and skeleton walk and hurt like that. Because when you're training for the marathon, I don't do any workouts that puts me in that zone. Like I get tired and it's accumulated fatigue, but it's not like, okay, we're gonna be burning this whole last lap. And so I think it's always good to shock the system a little bit and remember what that feels like.
That's like one of my favorite parts of exercising, is like trying to hit that limit. You're like, wow, and then I like kind of think like, man, I don't think I could have gone any faster. That might have been like today's actual physical limit. Like it's kind of cool to like touch that.
You feel
Feels
like
like
a tough
looking at the sun.
motherfucker. You feel awesome. It's like, damn, I just did that. I hammered to the point where I'm slumped over this bike and useless.
Yeah,
It's great. Yeah.
it's cool. Like I feel like a lot of people, or I always tell people that like when like if we've done too much and we're like just toast, like even from like a multiple day fatigue standpoint, it's like most people don't know what it's like to run too much, like, or like I've done like, this might be a harmful thing to say, but like run too much, and like you wake up one day and you like run down the street for 2 minutes, and you're like, I can't run. Like I've run like 100 miles in the last 5 days. I think I gotta go back to bed. Like that's just like cool to like tap out physically.
I've had a couple when I'm going for like my mileage PR. I'm like, I crush 4 days. I'm like 20, 20, 20 per day. And then that fifth day, I'm like, nah, I think I'm done. I think it's over. So that is a cool, I mean, it's just a feeling of power. That's what I miss the most about being is like running 120 miles a week and being that fit. It's just like, you just feel almost powerful because of how fit you like. I can go run whatever I want. I could go run a 100 miler, I can run a hard 5K, I can run a fast marathon. And there's something about there's something addicting to that feeling. So I definitely understand that. And then just being able to give your athletes, because not every athlete's going to have that ability to run 120 miles a week and feel that, but they can certainly get a taste of it, or they can feel stronger than they've ever felt before. And maxing out, like we were talking about, is one way to kind of help, give them that feeling. Oh crap, I've never felt like that before. I've never done that before. This feels awesome. After you get over vomiting in the trash can, it feels awesome.
It feels cool to take that into your life though. Like I was a high school math teacher for a long time, and like pushing to that limit in the morning and then going to work, like it just gave me like a different like confidence. Like these people don't know that I like was on the side of the highway, like unable to breathe like 40 minutes ago. Like I ran 20 miles this morning and now we're in here doing Sokotoa. Isosceles triangles.
I saw this video as a reel on Instagram of this girl, and she was walking around New York City, and she was like looking down on everyone because they didn't run 14 miles that morning.
I
And
think
like
I saw that too.
how she completely owned the day because she's like, oh, I ran 14 miles this morning. Like, what did you do? Like, you know, and it's just kind of like, yeah. I mean, there was definitely empowerment to, you know, to being able to do that. I liked it. You know, when I was I was thinking about it on my run this morning. So like when I was in high school, it's just like you take pride in being able to like to do more than everyone else. Right. Like that's like that makes you feel good. And so obviously when you get to the certain level, like you're not really doing that much more than anybody else, but like it is a good feeling just to be like, hey, yeah, you know, you're working hard and you're kind of like right there on the line between, you know, am I going to take a couple steps out the door and come back in, or, you know, keep trudging along.
So I was, you know, I wanted to kind of switch the conversation around a little bit. You know, we just had the Olympic marathon trials, and it was kind of an interesting year. I watched it like a couple of days later, so I was a little late to the party, and I thought they were pretty interesting races on both sides. I thought the men's race was dramatic and interesting until like the last mile or two. And I thought the women's race was also really interesting. I kind of wanted to get, you know, we didn't really get a chance to talk about it in any of our group chats. I just wanted to kind of get some of your insights on what you thought about the trials this year from a racing standpoint, from an LOC. Dylan, you were on site. So you got to feel what the race was like to actually be in it. I was in Orlando for a couple of days, so kind of got to feel the vibe of the city pre-trials. Just kind of want to get your guys' impression on it.
I mean, from a competitor aspect of things, I was actually really happy that it was in Orlando. I was kind of skeptical at first. Like, I would rather it been in Chattanooga. Like, it's just sound like a more fun place to be. Like, seemed different. But obviously, we know kind of what happened there. But in Orlando, it was a great spot. I mean, it was easy. It's easy to get there. The hotel was simple. Like, everything was really close. And I think for what it was perfect for racing. The course was great. It was super flat, you know, good for spectators, the whole thing, 3 laps. People might disagree with me here, but it wasn't warm. Like everyone keeps talking about how hot it was. And I never really thought about the heat the entire time I was running.
The air temperature wasn't bad. The sun was intense. Like if you were I could see like bacon in the sun going fast. That was one thing I noticed. Well, the air temperature was cool, but if you were out in the sun, that's where it felt warm. And I mean, it's warmer than 40 degrees. Now, is it going to be as warm as it will be in Paris? No, it's going to be probably hotter and more brutal there. But yeah, well, I don't think it was as bad as everyone made it out to be.
Yeah, I mean, from a logistical standpoint, I mean, we stayed at this hotel. It was about a mile from the race course. They put everybody on buses the morning before, and they took us up to the kind of the seating area. What's really interesting is that they didn't have anywhere for us to sit or stand. We were outside. There were no tents. There were no chairs. I mean, there was a couple chairs laying around, but we were all just sitting in a parking lot. Like, kidding you not. Like,
how early before?
An hour.
Like what? How much? Dang.
A little more than an hour, actually. It was probably closer to 2 hours. Yeah, because I think we got on the bus around 8:30 or 7:45 or 8 o'clock. And so we just kind of sat there. I mean, it was fine. It was nice outside, fortunately, but like
so goofy, man.
There weren't like chairs and stuff. So like everyone was just sitting around.
Yeah, and for reference, both Atlanta and LA, like you had big tented area, places to put your stuff, tons of chairs, benches, you know.
Or like Boston and New York, like for the elites, they have like, you know, they put them inside and, you know, have like air conditioned, last minute water and bath. Like, you know, it's
none of that. Yeah, absolutely none of that. So that was kind of interesting and surprising. And then this year they actually lined us up by our race times. So if you had run,
I like that a lot.
If you had run like under 2:11, then you got the very first line of people. And then they had and then there was like the next line and then everyone else after that. So I was kind of like nestled into closer to the back of that, but it was actually kind of cool because as you can imagine, those things get really. People are always fighting their way up to the front, and you get the people who shouldn't be there, who are up there, and can don't yeah exactly, and impede on other people's on other
The
people's performances.
I was like, I was looking at pictures, and I was at Black Canyon the last 2 years, and yeah, the men and women start together, and it's just like so many just like random citizens like so far in front of all the elite men. It's just like, I don't know. That's always just such the funniest thing about racing, how people line up like that.
Yeah. I mean, what you get with that too is just like it becomes carnage later on. Like people drop out in the trials races more than any other race than I've ever experienced. It's all or nothing for a lot of people. I think there was something like 70 guys
It
in
was
the
like
men's race who
30% of the field, I think.
yeah,
Something like that.
yeah. So
I
it's
mean,
like
I
I
haven't
obviously
had
didn't.
one in good weather in like many years.
I obviously like
Yeah,
didn't
I
have.
feel like the time of year is hard.
Yeah,
It's
Like it
impossible.
lines up with
It's
no
either going
one's
to be
schedule.
and it's either going to be cold depending where you go it, or it's going to be like 65, 70 degrees, because you can do it in the southwest where it's going to be warm, or you can go in the northern part of the country and it's going to be freezing cold. So
I mean
you
you
No,
get
can
one
have
or
it
the
in
other.
Phoenix.
Put it back in Houston, man.
But I'm okay with the trials being warm because the Olympics are going to be warm or hot. So just like that's why I didn't really. I was a little frustrated with some of the athlete, chatter beforehand about the race time and it being hot. I'm like, the Olympics are hot. Like, why wouldn't we want to choose someone who can handle racing in a warm weather marathon? Because that's applicable to the Olympics. If we just wanted to pick the fastest three via time, pick them off a list. We're trying to pick the best three racers on the day who can, who are going to race well at the Olympics. And I think having a warm trials location is appropriate. That's just my opinion. I'm a crotchety old man. Take it for what it is, but that's kind of how I feel about it.
I
Yeah, I feel
just
like
like
that's
that.
not
I like the trials is not like a time trial race. It's like I like that. I mean, as someone who's never gonna really be like at the pointy end of that race, it's like I kind of my goal is always to try to finish as high as possible place wise. And so like I'll come into the trials. This wasn't the case this time around, but like I like to come in. I mean, I come into these races. I don't have the top end speed for a marathon that a lot of other people might have, but I like to be the person that kind of shows up when it counts. And that's a really cool thing about the trials is like that's the only marathon that most Americans can actually do that.
Yeah, I wish we held it like a regular important marathon, like Chicago, New York, Boston. I wish it was like a 7, 8 a.m. start time, and it just feels
I
like every
definitely
year
think they should have it like if they had it with a major marathon, that would be fine.
they used
Like
to
that would
have
be
it in
cool.
Houston, and I think we go back to that. No more. Nobody needs any travel or hotel. Like if you're a pro, they're paying for it anyways. Everyone else, we can pay the $200 to get there. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, I think so many of the issues stem from the way USATF sets up the trials and the bidding process and how much money. I mean, that's
Nobody
why.
wants it.
Yeah, that's
It's a
why
huge
Houston doesn't
loss.
want anymore. They lost what, $2 million. Atlanta lost
But
a couple million
yeah,
dollars.
get rid of all those stipulations. You don't have to put up all this money. You don't need a prize purse. Like
But the city still benefits. Like
I don't know.
like
They think they did.
you lose
Atlanta
that
doesn't
money, but
think.
how much do you bring into the actual city too?
I mean, probably my guess is the economic impact is less than what we would expect it to be, because we're talking what, 400 athletes and
They said there
families
was 100,000 spectators.
and some and how many of those people already live in Orlando? Like, yeah, maybe there's some, maybe
Yeah, how many
there's some
people were
people.
just walking to the store and they're like spectator?
And I think like, I mean, to look at Atlanta, like Atlanta was like the spectator turnout at Atlanta was incredible. Like that place was rocking start to finish. It was six deep in some places.
They also ran a marathon the day before.
Yeah, exactly. And then they didn't want the trials back. So like how
I
much
just
how much
don't get it.
economic
Like
impact?
every major marathon already has a pro field of like 50, 60. So we make it to 100 and we do the exact same thing. Like you set them off
Yeah,
before
so you can't
everyone.
tell me that Houston Marathon, which has what 25,000 1,000 people or something like that. Like, do the math on how much money just that race makes. Now throw in all the athletes for the Olympic trials. It's fine. Like, you're not going to be losing. You're not going to lose
Bro,
money off of that.
ultimate trials, out and back course. So you split the road, and then you're coming back, and all the fans or all the participants are just freaking losing their mind watching those guys come back through.
That'd
Or
be cool.
do loops, and you have it segmented, regular, and dude, that would be
An inner and
epic.
outer loop.
Yes. So you're seeing those guys come by like 4 times. It's lifting everyone's spirits.
I'm not gonna lie, I do like so the last 2 trials, there's a bunch of out and backs and turns and stuff like that, and it's from my perspective too. Like, I'm racing, I'm out there and I'm trying to push myself, but like I can still see who's in the lead. So it is kind of interesting because you don't see it that frequently, but like the lead changes, you're like, oh, like so and so is in first place, or you kind of get an idea of who's winning the race. Because like I never watched the race. But I saw some of it unfold out there.
From a business perspective, running only has one positive benefit from a economic participation standpoint, is that we can do that. We can be in the same race. We can't go play with LeBron. Like, golf has a little bit, like you can play on the
Yeah,
same
golf is
course.
kind of like that.
Sometimes there's pro-ams, but you can't play the Masters with Tiger.
Right.
Like you can't play Augusta with those guys. Like, this is the only place where you can line up behind Scott Fauble and pretend to be in the same race as him. And I just feel like it's and we have 50,000 people that choose to do that at some races, and I feel like so often fumble that. Like,
Well,
at every race, that should be a part of it. We should have community miles at NCAA indoors. We should have a community 8K at National Cross. Like,
Brings more money too.
well, it's part of the whole sponsorship model, and it's why sponsorship money will dry up to some degree, because there is no connection really between those athletes and then the people who are just
no.
running the race, and that's how you get the money and the awareness. That's where it comes from. And
And what's the best advertising? Those guys run by in those Nike Alpha 5 3 6 times, and they loop around you, and you're like, that must be why they're faster than me.
And because it also feels like when you watch it on TV, they don't look as fast unless you get like that side view of it. But if you're running out there just running 8:30 pace, and then Zach Panning rips
Someone
by you at
sprints by
4:46 per
you.
mile, yeah, it feels
It's like you're
totally
standing
different.
still.
Yeah.
He's
I've
at
always felt
18, you're
like
at mile 9.
I've always felt like with going back to track was that, I mean, after a certain point, like some people never run a race on a track. Yeah, like most people, if they're running, they've never run a race on the track. And that's because the way that we set up track races here, and this is kind of similar to like how we set up like the Trials Marathon, where it's like it excludes, people from being able to do things on a track. Where it's like in all the other sports, like people get to, they can still compete. They've got like there are adult baseball leagues, there are softball leagues, there are volleyball leagues, like, but most people aren't able to compete in accessible track races.
Have you seen that? There's like a stat that like track has the highest participation percentage of any sport. Like, more people have competed in track growing up than any other, like basketball, baseball.
Makes sense. I mean, anybody can do
Because like
it.
in middle school, it feels like we like, at least in mine, like I think we made everyone go out in like 5th or 6th grade. Like, you could throw the shot, you could run the 400, and then you could quit. But like almost, I think everyone had to do like a year. But I think a lot of places are like that, where you had like you went to a track meet at some point.
It's also the biggest team, so there's a big social component to it. Everyone had friends who ran track, and if you didn't do a spring sport, like, oh, I'll go out for track, and it's more of a social
And
thing.
you don't have to share the ball. Like, there's not,
You
even
don't
if
get
someone's
cut.
good, yeah, it doesn't affect. We just put you in a slower heat, or like it's not a big deal. But yeah, it's so weird that like New York, Boston, Chicago, it's like, okay, we have 60,000 people. Let's bring the elites. Then we'll have a field. And then it's like, okay, the trials. Let's not do any of that. Let's get
Well,
everyone
I
out of
mean,
here, all the money, all the sponsors, and let's just have like 100 people on the road, and we'll try to finance it, and we'll complain about it the whole time.
and that's I mean, that's almost entirely USATF who does that because I mean, there were times when I mean, they did the trials with New York back when Ryan Hall won. They've done it with Houston. They've done it with big races, but because of what USATF wants out of the race and what the races get out of it, like they've just scared
Mm.
everybody off. That's why the only people who bid for it this past go around were Chattanooga and Orlando. So part of it, there has to be an evolution on the side of the governing body to want to attract those people back. And there has to be a little bit of, I think the bigger races have to want to do it and have that additional, put the additional work into that. And so it's a two-way street. And how much do those races really benefit? How much does New York benefit from adding the trials when they already sell out every single year? And they already have one of the best elite fields in the world. So what's the benefit to them for it outside of, oh, it's cool. We host the trials this in 2029 or
What's the
2028
benefit
or
for them?
whatever.
Like, we pay hundreds of millions of dollars in salary at USATF for people to make a piece of paper to tell New York what the benefit is. So that's incredibly sad that is our reality, that we're begging for people to think that this is interesting or that this could add value.
It is incredibly sad. You're absolutely right. It is incredibly sad. I agree with you.
What does Max Siegel make? Like 40 million a year or something crazy? It's like you can't go explain to any race why this would be valuable or how you could add value to it. That's just
Well,
pathetic.
we also run into like it could be the point where like the races can't advertise because they can't advertise against the advertisers that the USOC and
Yeah.
USATF has. So you can't bring in another big footwear sponsor per
All
se.
of that, like, or there's so many
or no,
stipulations in how much money they have to put up, or whoever bids it, they're required to do all these insane things. It's goofy. It's not.
it's not sustainable, and it's gonna. I don't think it's gonna bite them for 2028 because they have the Olympics. They're gonna want to probably do the trials in the LA. It's gonna be that's gonna work out, but I think beyond that, it's gonna crumble. I think sooner rather
Bro,
than
but
later.
even like the whole standard thing, like I don't understand that at all. Like you just said about how Atlanta was like places were 6 people deep, and they were like, okay, let's cut the field into a third of that. It's like
Significantly,
what?
like
I just don't get
we're winning.
the difference. Like obviously the top 20 people are going to race each other. Who gives a
Yeah.
crap who's 8 minutes or 10 minutes behind? Like, why is
Mhm.
it's just another way where it's like, it hurts no one, it costs you nothing, and it brings you tons of money. Like, don't fly them. Like, yeah, if anybody who broke 230 can come, I don't give a crap.
Well, also tons of
Um,
good PR because you get all the local stories of the teacher, the mom, the whoever who hits the Olympic trials, and they kind of get to be a celebrity in their community, and it kind of brings a spotlight onto those individual running communities, which is good for everybody. It's good because that person could be affiliated with the local run shop, and so the run shop gets some buzz out of that, and it adds a little bit of legitimacy to the whole thing. So like there's a trickle down effect to that for
and
sure.
dude, I think what people miss in sports is we don't know. It's not a high percentage, but you don't know how many of those people, when you move those standards back. You see the thing about the Cowboys kicker? The
Which
Dallas
part? Which
Cowboys
one?
is the Dallas Cowboys.
No,
He
What
the
was it about?
he played soccer in college. He was just like a random and then he got a finance job, and his wife was like, you should be trying to become an NFL kicker. So he went out and did it, and he led the league in field goal percentage this year. First year,
Yeah,
never kicked
I don't
before.
remember.
Like,
Yeah.
you just don't know how many like random people are like who are good at running that like moving that back, like, oh man, I made the trials, maybe I will try, and they become something. But it's like, I don't know, I've heard the excuse that it like dilutes the field or ruins the experience. Like, what is New York and Boston? Do those 60,000 people behind you ruin the experience?
I think there has to be tiers to to make the sport like great and make it there to be an achievement, like especially for the people who are chasing trial standards. Like that's a pretty big deal for a lot of people. And like Boston is not a big deal for that population. So it's nice to have something to like achieve versus, because like here's the thing, if you get rid of the trials, you might as well just cut US marathoning like out of the equation. You're just going to get less, like you're going to get significantly less people who run between 215 and 225. It's just people just aren't going to be as interested anymore.
I don't know. I feel the opposite.
Really?
I mean, I think people. I mean, yeah, I'm not saying like cut those incentives or cut like, yeah, they're obvious, but I don't know.
I just think of
That
it
is a
like,
good point.
why would
But
you
like,
put in all that time, all that effort, and like your reward from it is what? Finishing 38th place at the New York City Marathon? Like, what do you care about that anymore?
Well, now we're getting into a whole conversation about what
Yeah,
should
we don't
your
need to go
motives
into it.
be.
We don't need to
Yeah.
go into it,
Yeah.
obviously. And we're kind of short on time here, but like that's just my thinking of things. It's like I think it
it's a
provides
good
like a
question.
big, yeah.
I mean, I think
Yeah,
there's
like you said, there's probably like a tier system or something, but
there's value to. I mean, just do what you did. They did this at Atlanta too. They just lined you up. Hey, if you're slower than this, you're in the back. Like, and you just even if you
Yeah.
give them like put a 10-second gap between the leaders, the 2:12 group and faster, they get a 15-second gap between them and the 2:15 and slower because that might cause an uproar because like, oh, what if someone has a great day? It's like it's never going to happen again. There's too many guys who can run 2:08 up there. The
yeah, or it could be like
2:15
funding
guy.
related. Like, okay, 215, you get bottles. Everybody that runs under 220, you get a pair of shoes. I don't know. You can like do. We have a lot of money at USATF.
I
You
still
could
think
do
there has to be a
whatever.
standard, and naturally the standards will get faster. But like, I
220.
don't think
and
they should get rid of it all. You know, like I don't.
I
think
would
they
like
should
that
get rid
better than the Olympic standard. Have like a trial standard of like something really soft, and then whoever it is, top 3. If you want to go like stand in front of Galen Rupp for 10 miles, all right, good luck. Just have it
What do
be
you?
a little bit cutthroat.
I mean, that's how it used to be. There was the flag guy Trent Briney who got 4th, I think
Yeah.
in 08 in New York, and he was a 2:18 guy going in, and he ended up 4th, like
Dang, I didn't know
just a
that.
couple seconds off the team. So I mean, you see less and less of those stories, I think, as we go on, just because the guys at the front just have so many more advantages to a guy who's working full time and trying to keep it going. But I mean, the more you limit the field, the less you take out those stories. So
You think they'll drop the time again?
I don't know. That's a great question. I think I'm a little nervous for the trials as a concept because we kind of saw it this year for the first time with that third men's spot not being guaranteed. So I think it kind of depends on what like the IOC does with their standards and how that affects the trials.
Dude, that's
Um,
made it so uninteresting. That
yeah,
was
on the
always the
women's side, it
best
was
part
still
about the
good. But
trials. You get top 3. It's that it. None of this other complicated stuff.
This one thing I just want to add to the financial piece of things. I think they should start. I think running should be like NASCAR. You just have like you can have as many sponsors and put it all over your jerseys as much as you
or
want.
let it be like triathlon. It's the same.
The
It's the
dumbest
same
thing in the
thing.
world that we don't.
It would
Yeah,
make so much more money for the sport.
we have so many draconian. I mean, let people gamble on track races. Like,
Bibs.
yeah.
Seth Godin wrote a really cool piece in the New York Times about how like running bibs are the most archaic, goofiest thing, and we will not let it go.
At the meeting, the USATF guy was like, "That bib is the most important advertising aspect of."
It has no
of
it has someone's
running."
name.
And it was like there was one little sponsor on the very bottom. He's like, "That's the most
The
important piece
jerseys
for
look
advertising."
awful. It's aesthetically awful to watch. It's kind of like a punch in the face. Like, who's watching this and doesn't know who Connor Mance is? Like,
It's like,
and
oh, you can only have
even
a
when
logo this big. The
when he's
logo
on
can
the
only be 2
screen,
inches.
we're gonna put his name up. We're gonna give his background story. We're gonna show his family. Like, what is this bib doing? Like,
Nobody's reading
it's
it.
such now or like track. We have to wear like 9 numbers, and they're just immediately like, what is that?
Two hip numbers, the big one on the front, the big one on the back. Yeah, you feel like you're a sale because you have so many bibs on
Or at
you.
least I could get that and then know the front and back bib, but just
We
like,
had to put tape. We had to put black tape over
of course,
Nike logos on our
of course,
shorts and shirts.
too
Like you
big.
can only have one.
Running is so we could fix it all tomorrow and bring 3 times the revenue. Like you said, beer, gambling, jerseys go crazy.
I mean, there are so many sponsors who would get into the game if those opportunities were available. We just limit the pool of money so much because of the rules. Like
Well,
you
then
let
it limits
someone.
the runners.
Yeah,
You have this one chance to get sponsored in this certain way, And if you don't do it, then it's not there.
And those benefits are so limited for the sponsor anyway, unless you're good on social media or provide something other than being fast. Like I've had a big discussion with some people this weekend about trail running sponsorships specifically, but about sponsorships in general. And it's just like that pool of money is going to keep getting drier as the brands see less and less return from sponsoring elite athletes.
And that's
So-
that's top down. That's not like it's top down. That's the issue.
It's always been stratified. It's just going to become more stratified as we go on. But
Yeah.
I think we got to cut it there because our boy
Yeah.
Will has to go be a coach and go get on a coaching call. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Mind Your Miles podcast. Please look us up on social media. If you have any questions or want to give us a topic, you can email us at mindyourmilespod@gmail.com. On behalf of Willie B, Dylan, and myself, thank you so much for listening, and we will catch you next time.